president has shown support for South African refugees that are coming to the United States next week. Can you talk about what these refugees are fleeing and why this is a priority for the administration?
Well, the president has actually signed an executive order on that matter. My office can get it back to you, Michael. But this group in South Africa has faced racial persecution. In fact, the government there has vowed to take away their farmland that they own. And so the president has talked significantly about this. As for further details on refugee claims and asylum claims, I would defer you to the State Department.
Deeply and morally wrong-headed and repulsive. These are the descendants of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history, apartheid. They're not directly responsible for it, but it was a system that actually moved black people off of the arable land. So they inherited the land that the black people had to give up. It was called forced removal. It was something called a Bantustan policy, where they moved black people out of the cities and farmlands into these remote areas with non-arable land. I mean, it was just one of the most worst processes ever. But what has happened in this strange, bizarre world we're living in is that the Afrikaners have become the darling of these right-wing white supremacist movements around the world. Trump amazingly called it a genocide, one of the worst lies I've ever heard him say. There's just been a small handful of farmers that have been killed over the past 10 years. No land has actually been expropriated.
There is no white genocide. White people are hugely privileged, and that is our failure. I spoke to some matriculants from Hanover Park, I think about 10 days ago, and I actually got tearful when I said to them that I apologize on behalf of my generation that we haven't done more to dismantle the long tentacles of apartheid.
They only want white people here. Because when we think about refugees who need immediate resettlement, expedited screenings, we usually think about people who are fleeing extreme violence, persecution, famine, war in places like South Sudan, Myanmar, the Congo, not white Afrikaners. See that chartered plane the Trump administration is sending? It's not going to collect refugees that have been sitting in resettlement camps for years, fully vetted, waiting to come to the United States to escape violence. No, it's going to South Africa to collect white people who claim they're being discriminated against. Why would they be getting discriminated against? Probably because they spent generations instituting legalized forms of racial segregation and discrimination called apartheid, aka Stephen Miller's wet dream. See, while the rest of the world after World War II saw that maybe racial discrimination not such a hot idea and favored more policies of integration and away from colonization, Afrikaners doubled down on that shit and instituted apartheid. Although it ended over 30 years ago, the social and economic legacies of apartheid continue today. South Africa is the most unequal country in the entire world, according to the World Bank, with white South Africans earning over 12 times what black South Africans do. But don't worry, we're going to make sure that the white Afrikaners who instituted generations of discrimination and segregation against black people get everything they need to get started here in the United States in their new life.
Donald Trump is chartering a plane using U.S. taxpayer money to bring refugees from South Africa to America. Now let's think about this for just one moment. What is the same about all these South African refugees that we might notice? They're all white people. That's right. And so when we talk about deporting people, it appears that they're mostly non-white. But we can bring in South Africans who are white. And I just can't shake this feeling. I just can't shake this feeling that maybe, and I'm not saying it, I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not in the room when these conversations occur. It seems to me that it's possible that these guys in the White House are motivated by certain aspects of these people that they're bringing in and taking out. I guess I'm not saying it's true.
When Donald Trump sends in white South Africans, he's not sending us their best, all right? He's sending us their failures. He's sending us their crybabies. And some, I assume, are really good people.
Sending private planes to pick up 8,000 Caucasian South African refugees when we're kicking people out that are in the middle of their immigration proceedings here in the U.S. now. Literally having people show up for their final steps of their immigration process and having them arrested, detained, and deported. Doesn't make any sense to me. unless
we built apartheid, and now we're refugees. We took the land, we took people's futures, we took their dignity, and now we're being given refuge. What must it feel like to be a person of color, a black person in South Africa, watching my people who broke this country and now run off to claim victimhood somewhere else? We say we're afraid, but we built what we were afraid of. In 1994, we didn't give over power, we just gave over the mess and said, it's your fault, you deal with it now. But our white hands are clean. And now we're fleeing the country, crying reverse racism. So black South Africans, please tell the bad guy right here how it makes you feel. Because this is not right. This is sick. And I don't want to be the perpetrator anymore.
To the 50 Afrikaners who fled to the US, calling themselves refugees, you are not refugees. You are just a case study of white flight dressed up as martyrdom. You're not escaping violence, you're escaping equality. South Africa didn't chase you away. You ran. Yes, South Africa is one of the most violent countries in the world. Yes, brutality exists. But let's be honest, violence affects all communities, not just white farmers. Black, colored, Indian, and yes, white people are all targets of a national crime crisis. What we have is a breakdown in safety, not a white genocide. This is not ethnic cleansing, it's criminal collapse, and running to the US won't fix it. You are part of a 7% minority, but somehow still manages to control over 70% of the wealth. That is not persecution, that's privilege on a guilt trip. And let's be real, if we tried to relocate just half of the Afrikaans population, it would take decades, billions in logistics, and you'd still end up culturally homeless in a country that don't want your apartheid baggage. You're not brave, you're not victims. You're scared of a world where you don't get to be in charge, and that makes the rest of the Afrikaans community cringe, because you make us look weak. South Africa is broken, and it's our problem to solve. So if you don't have the spine to do so, stay gone.
To all of the South African Afrikaans refugees that are coming to America soon, I just want to let you know, as someone whose wife is Afrikaans, who's been to South Africa multiple times, you're going to have a bad time. There's no white genocide happening in South Africa. You have crime that's happening as a result of racism-fueled generational economic inequality, the same thing that's happening in America. We're just a couple decades ahead of you on the unchecked capitalism timeline. But I have good news for you. You don't have to worry about the cheap exploited labor rising up against you anymore, because now that you're in America, you'll get to be the cheap exploited labor. If you were middle class or upper middle class in South Africa and you come to America, you're poor now. Like, really poor. You're not gonna have maids and gardeners and personal servants that you can pay $15 a day for. Now you get to be the cheap labor. But by all means, please come to America and experience the American capitalism that Elon Musk's been raving about to you. You'll probably love it. You know, what do I know? There's probably very little chance that you'll end up going back to South Africa in a year or two after realizing how overpriced and fucked up America is. I wouldn't even worry about that as a possibility. And if you think I'm being mean to these people because I think they're a bunch of racist, bigoted colonizers who wish they could go back to apartheid South Africa, it's just because I do think that. But to them, I say, welcome to the American dream. Please let me know when you've woken up from it.
So y'all want me to believe Trump is putting America first by allowing white Afrikaners to be refugees, to come here to these United States of America and be provided housing, a cell phone, food, diapers, all that. Meanwhile, we have veterans homeless. We have American taxpayers struggling. And you want me to believe he's not racist either, because God knows he's deporting undocumented taxpayers, okay? He's deporting babies who are 2 years old and can't fend for themselves, so they got to go with the family. They got deported, okay? Mind you, he's deporting people with visas who went through the legal process, but still getting rid of them. But we're going to invite these white Afrikaners here to America, and we're gonna give you all the things you need. But he's not racist, and he's putting America first. That's the nation that I'm living in right now. That's the nonsense that you guys continue to speak, and the goalpost constantly moves. Y'all have no foundation of morals, of anything. You don't.
The racists are assembling like the Avengers. And folks can say that they resting, they sitting it out, this not our fight. But these are your resources. that these white folks from South Africa are about to take. Resources that you can't even get access to. Mind you, they're calling these people who colonized one area of the world refugees. Was Poland not available? Is France closed? Folks can complain, cry, scream, and throw up about the election all they want, but it's May. What you finna do about it? Because the last thing I'm doing is expecting any other group of folks to put it on the line for us. They can't even get the protest part right. They're monetizing off of movement work with no actual movement.
I think there's some misunderstanding about the Afrikaners. They're coming in with P1 refugee status, which means they have the same rights and the same benefits as any American walking around. I would not even be surprised if the administration fast-tracks their citizenship, which means they get SSI checks, $800. They get housing, SNAP, and Medicaid. As they kick the majority of you off in the red states, as they kick y'all off, they're going to put them on. As they cut your SNAP, they're going to give them full benefits. As they cut your SSI, SSDI, some of y'all get like $500. They're going to give them the full benefit that they would get. See what racism, patriarchy, and fear gets you? It gets you fucked up. There is a reason the Episcopalian Church refused to help them, because they were never facing a genocide. They weren't facing discrimination either, but they were fleeing discrimination. Well, so you come to a country that discriminates? That we had rules put in place so that we couldn't be discriminated against? Oh yeah, that's right. They discriminate against the right kind of people. The only thing that happened to you in Africa is that you were being held accountable for the shit that your generations did. And you didn't like that. You didn't like that. You didn't like that black people had a say. But that's okay. You're going to learn here that black people have a say. And you're going to learn here that there's a special kind of black, and then there's a special kind of white here. Whites that love black people. Whites that are married to black people. And you're going to learn the hard way. You are. There will be no apartheid America. Because the man that you entrusted with your life is only going to be president, probably at max 2 years before we're able to get him out. And then we're going to come and we're going to look at you. And we're going to deal with you. And then we're going to deal with his entire administration by putting them all in jail.
The white South African people, and I say that loosely, that I've had to deal with on this app for being completely just abhorrent, literally are in their nanny boo-boo stage of racism. And you see, I'm 40 years old, and I dealt with that back when I was 5, 6, 7. So while people are saying, oh, you better watch out, they're just so the worst of the worst, and it's like, yeah, we've been there. Like, we're the blueprint for this. Their little nanny boo-boo, stick your head in doo-doo stuff. Yeah, that's child's play over here.
Welcome back. So in this video, white Americans react to this breaking news that refugees from South Africa who are Africans are being brought into the United States of America, and they share their diverse views on this particular thing. And I think I really agree with majority of the people who share their views in this video, taking into consideration this period where the United States is trying to deport people. It has rolled out the mass deportation policy in order to deport a lot of people. So if you are deporting a lot of people from your country, how then do you still bring in new people to the country? Is it some caliber of people that you don't want to see in your country? Or why do you even engage in this deportation if you are bringing in some people into your country? Now, what is happening in South Africa, I'm not sure is something that is that brutal or something that calls for people to become refugees. The minority of people in South Africa, that is the whites in South Africa, who make up, I think, about 30% of the population, owns about 70% of the farmlands in South Africa. So the government is trying to introduce this known as the Land Reappropriation Bill, where lands are going to be taken over by the state in order for there to be equal distribution among people in South Africa. And I don't see this to be a bad thing. The minority of people in the country are holding on to majority of the resources. So we are claiming all the resources together and then divide it equitably among the population. Is this something that is difficult to understand? I like the perspective of one young man in the video who says that it is because that this privilege that has been taken away from them, that is why they are going out crying the victim. And this is very much true, because they have been privileged for all these years. So taking that privilege away from them make them feel some other way. So that is why they are reacting this way. I don't know why Donald Trump will agree to bring in all these people to the United States of America. In fact, he was the main person who even made the promise to them that he will bring them to the United States of America. So he's trying to fulfill that promise, but I don't think this is something that the American taxpayers should bear. Fly those people from the South Africa all the way to the United States, and are you going to cater for all of them when they get to the United States? Are you going to set them up for life when they get to the United States? That is, are you going to give them any seed funds for them to begin any kind of business or job opportunities or anything like that, for them to fast track their life or anything like that? I don't think this is something that should call for people to become refugees. And I don't even think that these Africans who have moved from South Africa to the United States are even indeed refugees. Because if you look at the definition of refugees, that is people who have been forced from their home country to leave because of maybe war or any unfavorable conditions in their country to leave. That is when we term them as refugees. But in this case, they are the one leaving. No one has forced them in any way to leave. There are a lot of them who said that they are not going anywhere. South Africa is their homeland and they are staying in South Africa. So I don't see why some of them decided that they will move to the United States of America. The United States also has its own set of problems, and if you are told about some problems in the United States of America, you will not even think of going there in the first place. Anyway, let me know what you also think about all these in the comment section below. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and your family on other social media platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just click the subscribe button down here. Click on the subscribe button. Click as well on the notification bell. And I'd like to see you again in my next video.